Um, Good afternoon. My name's Shafak Mohammed. I'm actually a city councillor here in Sheffield, and on my behalf, I want to just welcome all the guests and visitors to Sheffield, a great city. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed the film that we've seen earlier. I've been asked to chair a Q&A session with Mo here in terms of the documentary you've seen. But the first question I just want to ask Mo before I open the floor is, what was your highlights and what was the low point when you made this documentary?
I think they were both kind of one and the same. I think a highlight was, and a low point was, when Osama bin Laden was caught and captured and killed in Pakistan. And we had to go to Washington, D.C. with Musharraf. On the one hand, as a filmmaker, I was like, wow, this is great, this is a great scene. And on the second hand, I felt like a giant moron for actually believing him all this time, so, yeah.
Well, I may have some more questions later on, but I'm going to open it to the floor first. So anyone that wants to ask Mo any questions about the film itself or... Right at the back, gentleman with the glasses on. All the way at the back.
Firstly, well done. I thought it was a really lovely, intimate portrait of a big political subject, which is quite unusual. I wondered, two questions. One was a very prosaic one, which is, how did you get access to film in the House of Representatives? I mean, that was a fantastic scene. And I suppose the other question is, how did your opinions change as you were making the film? I mean, did you go in with a sort of clear view of the proposition of the film, or did that change massively over time?
So, Musharraf, one of his nephews is actually a childhood friend of mine. So he was at least able to get me to meet his initial handlers, his press handlers, and I was able to interview him just once. But because my production period was so long, it was like 5 years, I kept on kind of coming back and started making friends with him, and we kind of developed our own relationship. And, you know, he kind of liked the camera, so I used that to my advantage, and I tried to be as unassuming as possible, and I continued following him, and the access kind of grew from there. In terms of getting access into the House of Representatives, well, technically it's public property, and as long as the people that you're filming are okay with you filming, you're allowed to film. And since I was making this film on Pervez Musharraf, the people who were engaged in the meeting with him were okay with it and fine with it. As far as my opinion, I think it was interesting. I certainly came in with my own. I mean, Musharraf is such a polarizing character, and I think people definitely have their own presumptions about him. I certainly did. I used to think of him as I mean, I wasn't blind to his flaws, of course, but I definitely thought that he was the best of a bad situation. And I genuinely believed that he really could stabilize the country. And I had put a lot of my faith and stock in him. And then that, as I got to know him on a personal level, began to deteriorate. And, you know, lots of events started happening in front of me, whether he was being charged with treason, whether he himself was admitting that the Constitution is a piece of paper that can be thrown in the dustbin, or whether, you know, he continued to agree with this double-dealing policy that we have with India. This was not like third-party news anymore. It wasn't like I was reading about it. It was visceral. It was one-on-one. So I couldn't deny that anymore. And it kind of was like a cold splash of water to my face. And that's why I kind of put myself in the film. Initially, when I approached this film, I never wanted to put myself in the film. In fact, this is my first film in which I completely break the fourth wall. And it was important to me because I was kind of going through my own political trajectory and journey. I think, and my journey is not unique. I mean, there are many others in Pakistan who were kind of going through the same.
Okay, next question. Oh, should we take the gentleman at the back, right at the back? And then the gentleman here.
Hi, so First, I would like to say that I very much enjoyed the movie. So I understand that this is the world premiere, so I'd like to know if there are plans to show it in Pakistan and what you expect the reaction to be over there.
Yes, inshallah, I hope to show the film there. We literally just printed the DCP like 5 days ago. So we're right in the midst of sorting our festival schedule out and then eventually our broadcast plans and stuff. I definitely want to show it in Pakistan. I hope they allow it. My previous film was banned in Pakistan, but we still managed to show it in Pakistan through different venues. And if I need to do that again, then that's fine. I think the reaction to it so far, I think Pakistanis are such a great audience because they come already with a lot of the context there. And many of them are polar opposites in terms of their political viewpoints than mine. And I think if anything, they might have visceral reaction that maybe really like the film or that maybe really hate it. And that's fine. I mean, I think that's the point that I wanted to bring into this film, is that political dialogue is important. And if I'm able to achieve that with this film, then that's great. Awesome.
Can I just add more? General Musharraf actually came to Sheffield, I think about 5 years ago, and I actually was one of the people that welcomed him. And you're right, it's quite polarising in a sense that my biggest critics were the same people that I'd welcomed Nawaz Sharif's brother a few years previously, and the speech was almost identical in welcoming Sheffield's a great place, there's a huge Pakistani population, they've got huge issues, please come and listen, I hope you come back. And both sides were just really critical of why did you attend his event or why did you attend his event. And when I said, did you actually listen to the message I gave? Because it was the same message I gave to Shehbaz Sharif and you were cheering me to the rafters then, but now you're criticising me. So all I'll say is more, if you do get banned in Pakistan, by all means come back to Sheffield and play the movie here because we'll welcome it. There's a gentleman there. What is hand up?
Hi, yeah, great movie. Really like that. I guess my question is, I don't suppose Musharraf has seen it? Yeah, I suppose that's one question. And the other question is I kind of get a sense of Pakistan being in some way, because of what's happening with Saudi Arabia and some of these other places. Basically, the question is, what do you kind of think about the future as far as Islam and all the stuff that's going on in Saudi Arabia and lovely Mr. Trump at the end there?
Well, it's a huge question, and I can only answer it just from my layman experience and just from what I know, and by no means I'm some expert on this. But Musharraf, so your first question, Musharraf has seen parts of the film, and I was always upfront about what I was doing here. And as long as he got a platform to tell his side of the story, which is what I did. As far as Pakistan, one of the initial questions when I first started making this film that was quite popular in geopolitical circles was that whether democracy is even functional in an unstable Muslim country. I think that's a deeply cynical and offensive question because, I mean, the whole point of me making this film is to realize, actually it is. And the way that we have to kind of overcome and fight the negative influences in our country, and have been, is by finding our own democratic voice. And that's kind of what I learned through this process. As far as Saudi Arabia, well, Pakistan is allied with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia right now is having, and UAE, and they're having their own internal political disputes with Qatar because of their own different policies. And Pakistan, unfortunately, gets dragged into that. And that's the problem, I think, with a country like Pakistan. It's such a strategic country. And there's so much outside interference in it, whether it be from the United States or Saudi Arabia or China. My hope is for Pakistan to start being more self-determined and take accountability and start making its own decisions. And I think the way to reach that is by, like I was saying, finding our own democratic voice. And I don't think there's any non-compatibility between that and Islam or anything like that.
Okay, you're going to go on this side, lady at the bottom there.
Thanks very much for the film. It's great.
Thank you.
First question, if I may ask two. The one is out of my own ignorance, but could you please summarise what you see as the key policy differences between the two candidates in the election? And the second question is whether or not you're getting a British broadcaster to buy it, because I hope you are. I hope it'll be shown in Britain. But on the policy differences, if you could say something, please.
Between, well, the three candidates that I feature, like Musharraf and... Well, Nawaz Sharif tends to be a little more conservative and right-wing in his political party. The Pakistan Muslim League, Nawaz, does do that. And Musharraf and Imran Khan actually tend to be grouped in the same kind of centrist political spectrum. Imran Khan's main platform was to, when he was running in 2013, was to clean up corruption and have a new Pakistan as such. And Nawaz Sharif, of course, came with his own baggage from his own political past of being extremely corrupt and whatnot. And he also wanted to stop participating in the war on terror, stop drone attacks, stop and engage in dialogue with some of these extremist groups, and kind of find our own way to combat extremism through peaceful methods, through peace and reconciliation. Because of that, many people, myself included, would somehow label him, perhaps fairly, as a Taliban sympathizer. Musharraf, on the other hand, was more of a proponent of using military and militant action against some of these extremist militant groups, as he had done in the past.
Okay, gentleman at the back.
Hi, congratulations. I love the documentary a lot. Yeah, it's one thing, no matter which president change, I think I'm from China. I guess they never, I didn't see you in documentary. How do they look at China? And there's even saying that the Sino-Chinese relationship is sweeter than honey, deeper than sea, and whatsoever. So how do you observe all these presidents? They look at China and how the role China plays in the Pakistan political life. And the last one, you also about Taliban. It's very impressive. They have done good things for the poor people, like the Chinese Communist Party. They used to do the same. So is there any chance that Taliban could become into power and they don't do terrorist thing anymore in the future? Thank you.
Well, I think the majority of Pakistan views China very favorably because of the economic corridor that's being developed and how much investment China is actually putting into Pakistan. And unfortunately for Pakistan, which unfortunately is sometimes a client state, you know, we go from one foreign country to another, like, so we were with the US and now maybe we might be with China. What I worry about, and there's a few people who do worry about, is that we hope that we don't become a Chinese colony. And that is something that, you know, not many people have brought up. It's not really a popular opinion, but I could see that happening in the long run. And that would be sad. As far as your secondary question, could the Taliban, well, the one thing to kind of understand, I think in Pakistan there's several militant groups. The Taliban is just one of them, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. There's also other groups like Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, Jaish-e-Mohammed, etc. There have been actual candidates who have been affiliated with those groups who have actually run. And in some instances, they've even won. But to think that that they would actually overtake and win unanimously. No, I don't think that's a possibility. I think with any religious parties, and I'll give you a really good example. In 2007 or 2008, I forget what year it was exactly, but a religious party did win in KPK, in our North Province, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and they constituted the majority of the provincial parliament. They weren't good at administration. They weren't good at actually giving to the people what their needs were. And so in the next election, they were voted out. And it would be unfair to say that, you know, all of Pakistan is supporting of this group. That's not the case at all. There's still few fringe minority groups that support them. They're loud, they make a lot of influence, but that doesn't mean that they could be voted into office. I don't think so.
Okay, just in front here.
Hi, thanks. I really enjoyed the film. I think one of the most moving moments was when you sit next to your bodyguard. And for me, I've visited Pakistan quite a lot, spent a lot of time there. I mean, for me, that is the question really in Pakistan is one of class. And you know, I'm a bit ignorant about it, but from what I've gleaned, when India became independent, there was a move to eradicate feudalism, whereas when Pakistan became independent, Jinnah left that aspect alone. And yeah, I mean, for me, that seems to be that's the question. If you can have a class consciousness raising that, I mean, that is the issue in a lot of Muslim countries, is that actually the working class get affiliated to certain ideas or that they feel are to do with Islam, and that is basically propagated, and historically that has been supported because people don't want to have a socialist. I mean, blah de blah. I mean, is there any hope for that? I mean, I'm not advocating socialism, but what I am advocating is that, you know, if and how can Pakistan find its voice through the people, you know, in some way, because that's the thing in Pakistan.
Sure. So when Pakistan and India gained, well, it was just India gained its independence from Britain, it was split into half, and India basically, when they actually did away with feudalism, Pakistan didn't. In fact, some of those traditions still continue to this day. And but what I will say is that you can, of course, look at it from a very negative standpoint, right? And you can say that that some of the biggest politicians who are most successful in Pakistan are huge feudal landlords. That's true. But if you look at even just the trajectory of Nawaz Sharif, who comes from a feudal landowning family, or even Benazir Bhutto and the Bhuttos, who also come from a feudal landowning family, their sphere of influence has actually become smaller, even in front of my lifetime, in the last 30 years. You can't say anymore that all of Punjab, which is Pakistan's biggest province, is immediately for Nawaz Sharif, PMLN. That's not the case. Imran Khan is there, and there's other smaller groups that are coming up and actually challenging that stronghold that some of these old political stalwarts have had. And I think that is democracy kind of working in Pakistan. I mean, you have to see that 2013, we gained our independence in 1947, but 2013 was really the first time we went from one democratically elected government to another. That was our first time. You know, before that, we were all our governments were either overthrown in coups or, you know, some disaster had happened. And let's look at Nawaz Sharif, for example. One of my biggest cribs with him when I was growing up was that he wasn't actually standing up for minority rights. And this year, he's actually pushing for them. You can say that's political theater, that's fine, but he kind of has to, because it's like a strong opposition in parliament now. So it's halting, it's ugly, it's sputtering, but it seems to be that democracy is taking root in Pakistan. So maybe things are getting better.
Okay, gentleman in the blue at the front here. Go on. Cheers.
I also enjoyed the film, thank you. The other film I've seen about a political figure here was one about Geert Wilders, who seems to wear his political burdens very heavily. Musharraf, not so much. He seems to wear his burdens in some ways quite lightly. As a comment, I don't know if you would share that view. My wider question was your conclusions about an emergent democratic space in Pakistan. Do you attribute that to Musharraf and his works? It wasn't entirely clear to me whether that was the case. And more widely, do you think that dictatorships can create democratic space under the right conditions?
I think he contributed to it indirectly, in the sense that once he was in power and he was out, I think the people realized as well, we've been through this path too many times and we're done with this. So in that way, you can say, yes, he contributed to Pakistanis believing more firmly in the democratic process and learning to trust that. I think many people argue, including Musharraf, and I used to say the same thing at one time, that in a place like Pakistan, you need more of a transition type, temporary, maybe military government that has its act together to kind of let Pakistan evolve and grow into what it, having a stronger democratic voice. I don't agree with that, honestly. I think that's because even when you have someone who's, I guess, by definition, somewhat of a benevolent dictator, once they leave, our civil institutions are as weak as they always were, and they don't get a chance to actually grow. And we're kind of stuck in that same position of always running to either, some savior or some military dictator to get us out of this mess. And that's a problem. I think we have to kind of cut ties with that belief and kind of go through the process, however painful it is, and actually let democracy let it grow stronger. And the only way it can grow stronger, because it's a self-correcting process, is for it to let it actually function, and for a longer period of time. Yeah.
Gentleman in the back, the white.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the film. I was quite interested that, obviously, for people who are not particularly aware of Pakistani politics, you chose not to go back further than about the 1990s. And I thought it was quite interesting. There were quite a few shots of Musharraf under a picture of Jinnah. And he said at one point, that the military has to step in every now and then to save the constitution, as if they've always done that in a positive way. And I don't think Zia al-Haq was, particularly a great role model around that, or treatment of minorities. And that sort of went unchallenged, that statement about the role of the army. And I think it's interesting if you compare it to Turkey, for example, where you could make a case to say that they have quite often stepped in to ensure democracy in some way continued and then left. Although, interestingly, now, they have a leader who has pretty much purged the army to be just how he wants it to be. And I'd be interested to know what you think the role of the army is and can be in Pakistan from now on.
Well, it would be nice for the army to actually function as under the civil government as an army should do, to provide safety and security and do its traditional role, rather than actually doing an administration. Zia al-Haq was an obvious choice, but I was too young to actually experience or have that frame of reference pre-Zia al-Haq, because I was just born in 1980, so I wouldn't be able to tell you that. And then during Zia al-Haq's time, I was too young. Although I know, of course, I'm not blind to just the disastrous policies that he's carried out, and has actually left Pakistan in really corrosive stages that we are still dealing with right now. I wanted to make a decision to purely tell it from my point of view. And for that, and my political coming of age started happening in my teens, late teens. And so for me, these were the cast of characters. And so this is what I wanted to concentrate on. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, I think we're coming towards the end. If there's any final questions. Right, gentleman in the white there.
Oh, just a quick one though. Did you film the sequence on the plane as he came back to Karachi?
Yes, I was on the plane, and I had another cameraman of mine at the airport getting all the activity outside.
Looked crazy.
Yeah.
I'm going to sneak a cheeky question for myself. Now you're done film Musharraf, who's next? Donald Trump?
I actually do know his son. He went with me to school in the States for my college. But no, I think I've had enough of tyrants for right now.
I think we've come to an end. I know there's one or two other hands. If you do want to speak to Mo, I'm sure as we walk
I'm
out,
here, yeah.
you know, he's still here. I'm going to get back to the town hall. But thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, guys.
Take care.